She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this.
I think there's a 40% chance he says the N-word, yeah.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Oh, here we go.
Kamala Harris. What's up? Good debate.
See, have fun.
Thank you.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their
Did they dye his hair?
issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we've
policy out already is good.
Time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20%
saying he's going to balloon the
tax
deficit
on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that.
It is a sales tax.
We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental
insane asylums
and insane asylums.
Is Hannibal Lecter
coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions will be affected very soon.
Those black jobs.
And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout.
He's really just saying buzzwords.
You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado.
No, he's
taking over.
Really?
Taking over.
He's bringing up the Haitians eating cats already.
These are the people that she and Biden led into our country. They're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the the highest level of criminality.
What? You see his eyes like
We have
shut.
to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies.
Like his right eye is like kind of shut.
I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm
That's actually pretty good.
On this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances.
But he has a new playbook.
What you're going to hear
Project
tonight
2025
is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us, and I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This is a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas. I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing.
He said he agreed with some of them.
I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do.
I'm an open book.
Taxes very substantially and create a
What a
great
liar.
economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic, and the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
He created the bounce back jobs?
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase.
She's throwing up the Biden
inflation, and by
laureates.
the middle of next year would invite.
I think that line should be dropped.
You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and
wait, please ask him, what is it?
Good, solid money for our country. Just to finish off,
stuttering.
She doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences.
What?
Just, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up.
Thank you so much for the 5.
Vice President brought up your tariffs. You
run, spot, run?
Let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across.
He's going to get cooked
with
with
this.
this.
Said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many.
I think Kamala's doing really well so far.
Tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer.
Hard hour clock.
President Harris
10 seconds to midnight.
Higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping
He can't even
us
China
off
like
for
he used
years.
to.
I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even
He's bringing up polls?
that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military. Basically, sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st
This hits crazy.
century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in
This debate prep is insane.
so that we win the race on AI, on
Things for the two.
computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. "Thank you, President Xi!" exclamation point. When we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
Oh my lord!
bought the
These
chips
hits are
from
insane!
Taiwan.
And some of them are from the
We hardly
right.
make chips anymore
And some of them aren't that bad. Well, all of them aren't that
Philosophies
bad.
like they have, and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything.
I'm
that she
really glad,
believed
finally,
3 years ago
that people are,
and
like,
4
bringing up
years
how
ago is
Trump
out
is
the
ass on
window.
the economy.
She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy, but if she ever got elected,
She's like Trump, but
change it.
hotter?
And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics,
Boy.
and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's
Guadalupe,
done
thanks for the
to
four.
our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say.
The split screen's
I think it's a lot
hilarious, I can't
higher than
lie.
the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals.
Insane asylums.
And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later.
Hannibal
Well,
Lecter.
bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often
Oh, no, it's over.
kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that
They hit the
you were
abortion
proud
early.
to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you
And then he
surprised
flip-flops.
many, with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, "I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks." But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia.
In the 17th
previous
month.
Governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, is doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution.
What is happening?
Because the baby is born is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for...
She should really ask what's a Marxist.
The mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exception.
Only talking about Republicans.
But we were able to get it.
She can hit him on that.
States are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar,
Sniffling's
every
crazy.
Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought.
Every
But
time they
each
vote, they
individual
disagree
state
with me.
is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans.
She's
make
really
no
strong
exception
here.
Even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right.
This is early and she's
about
flexing.
What happens to their body next? That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that.
Painting an image is crazy.
A 12 or 13
Really good.
year old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he
please,
will
the
sign
national
a
ban.
national abortion ban.
The contrast.
Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor.
She's
that would
hitting
be
all the
monitoring
buttons.
Your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President.
She's cooking. This is everything that I wanted from her, actually.
And there's no reason to sign a ban, because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states. And the states are voting. And it makes
It's like Christmas.
time. But for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart. And they've wanted it back in the states. And
Also, I didn't mention it earlier, but Trump gaffed, okay? Remember how he said West Virginia, the West Virginia governor? He's actually talking about the Virginia governor before Youngkin, actually. That like quote, like we'll figure out what the baby, like what to do with the baby afterwards. He was talking specifically about babies with life-threatening deformities. And actually, he completely messed up the types of governors.
The vote, especially now with the 50-50, and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said,
bro spent all his time at the golf course.
A different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions
is because of his justices, actually.
Student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking to me. But I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans.
We don't even have to talk about policy.
Young people.
Don't talk about it.
Other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said.
We don't even talk about it.
You have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask.
Oh, she's going to obliterate him.
Any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another
He's rolling his eyes
to get on a plane, sitting
at people at abortion, dude. It's
to
over.
go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
excuse me, I have to respond.
And then bring up freedom.
Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization.
I'm a leader on
the IVF. I have been a leader.
You just found that out.
When they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it.
What?
I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing...
Please don't say you're a leader on fertilizing.
You should ask. Will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
Under Roe v. Wade,
answer the question, would you veto?
You could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the
Probably after birth
of Virginia. The governor of
No, those are called
Virginia
school
said, "We put
shootings,
the
and you
baby
support
aside,
those."
And then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know
What's kind of insane, chat, is that she made it through the economy section, and it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. And that was like her weakest. Her second weakest is now.
Causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
Well, that's a nasty
person
framing.
on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs,
perfect.
and human beings. And let me say that the United
that's a perfect
States
answer.
Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill?
I think trans people can be national if they want.
Called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need.
There are good answers for Trump. Let's see if he hits them.
Who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and
She's hitting them on Twitter clapbacks.
And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to
is he going to get baited?
Successfully so that would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border?
First, let me respond as to the rallies.
Oh, of course.
People start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bringing them in
he's
and
triggered.
paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People
He's
go to
actually
my
triggered.
rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is lost. We're a failing nation, and it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here? You're going to end up in World War III. Just to go into another.
Oh my
subject.
gosh.
What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it.
I don't think people even know what they're talking about.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening.
Can you imagine being someone's grandma listening to this?
As far as the rallies are concerned,
They're eating their cats.
the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our
And he's back on
country
the rallies.
They want to make America great again. It's a very
It's
simple
over.
phrase. Make America great again. She actually
triggered him. It worked.
And if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success,
He can't help himself.
Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say,
He's reeling.
The people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that.
Grandpa,
Maybe
it's
that's a
time
good
to go
thing
to bed.
say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this. From
Dude, I
television.
saw them on
The
TV.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond
We'll see.
to what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who
not the bald spot flash,
if you didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor
he's
has said he is
pissed.
dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
The president,
Trump will give you
guy
a
who wants to be
quick minute
president, is talking about like how he saw stuff on TV,
because
and that's his
when I
policy.
hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people, not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family.
This is actually a decent answer.
They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they
can't write
such
books.
a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the
Why didn't they fire Mr.
That's
Inflation?
A good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any sitting president in history by far.
Except for Joe Biden.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted
wait, he had to say
talk about
sitting
earlier,
president
So let's get
now.
back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us.
It's actually
what does
50.
this look like?
Actually,
Will authorities be going
75% of
door-to-door
the
in this
American
country?
population is an undocumented
It
immigrant.
is much higher.
And 80% of them are eating cats.
They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals.
Hannibal Lecter.
They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers to come
The
into our
Joker.
country. And they're now
The Joker is in
United
America.
States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why?
Ooh,
because they've taken
he's
the
walking into a
criminals off
trap.
the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it. Because they're
That's great replacement, just so you know.
Of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed
He's
the
Nazi
fabric
posting.
of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down. All over the world, except here. Crime here is up and through the roof.
He's so
Despite the
angry.
fraudulent statements that they made. Crime in this country is through the roof, and we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent
He's
crime
actually
is
really mad.
coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse
President,
me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of
You did fraud.
818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
There's so many
This
frauds.
is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes.
He's actually
economic
really mad.
crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where each person stands on the issue of
I don't think we've ever seen him so mad.
respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me.
He's
Every
quivering.
One of those cases was started by them against their political opponent, and I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them, but those are cases. It's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases.
I've never done anything
was involved
wrong.
with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the
Fani?
Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases, and then they say, "Oh, he's a criminal." They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, "Oh, that's the toughest of them all." A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was
The difference
thrown
is
out.
when
It's weaponization,
when they asked Biden
and
to
they
give
used it, and
the
it's
bills,
never happened in this
Biden to give
country.
the papers
They
back, he
used it
did.
to
Trump
try
like
and
ran
win an
away.
election
Ran
for
away.
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military.
Not disdain.
Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
He's doing more of the puckered lip face.
Thank you. Lindsay?
He's like
Vice
looking up.
President Harris, in
He's
your
like
last
shaking.
run for president.
Weaponized, please.
We got to
This is the
continue
one
here.
that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of
Bullet to the
things
head.
that they say about me.
That was
They
AI
talk about
generated.
Democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a
President
fake
Trump.
Russia investigation
We do have a lot to
that
get.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking.
Giga cringe.
My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history
Giga
because of an
cringe.
approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership.
I think if you
knowing not
support
everybody
fracking,
got
you should be
handed
forced to drink 1
$400
cup of
million
frack
on a
water
silver platter and then file
before you're able to vote
bankruptcy
again.
6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million
Cringe.
homes
Make the
by the
government
end of
do
my
it.
first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well, first of all, I wasn't.
She should do a little bit more fact checking.
I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it.
Small loan of $1 million.
Many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that.
I'm rich,
Fracking,
very
she's
rich,
been
super
against it
rich.
for 12 years.
More rich than her dead mom.
Defund the police. She's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please.
Wait, he's
that
trying to
sound
do the
familiar?
I'm talking?
Don't lie.
She went out
Oh,
in
he's
Minnesota
mad.
and wanted to
Does it sound
let
familiar?
criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that
What?
would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns.
They're
and she
transing
will
the
never allow
migrants?
fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish one thing, so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before.
They're transing the
When they
aliens.
took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately
Not
let
up the
these
roof.
guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar. When
Windmills?
they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take
Why'd you shit on it then?
400,
President
500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about
She should have been able to
peaceful
respond to
transfer of
that.
power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president
fucking desert
in a moment of
soil.
crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television.
I don't think all of that answer was too bad.
You did send out tweets, but it was
he
more than
got
2
some
hours
decent hits
before
on
you
her
sent
there,
out that
honestly.
video message telling your supporters to go home.
But I don't think he's
Is there
come out
anything
with a
you
win on
regret
any of this
about
yet.
what you did on that day.
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police
A cop was
officer
killed.
that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace.
Who she was crawling
We didn't
into
do
the
this group of people
the chamber?
that have been treated so badly. I ask, What about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar.
He brought
She
this up
doesn't want to
late,
be called
honestly.
the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, "Well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet." That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David.
Insane
All over the
asylums.
world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage
went
of
to
the
see
city of Seattle. When are those
Remember, he
people
was
gonna
the
be
president then.
prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said,
They asked
"I think
me
it's
to make
gonna
a
be big."
speech?
I went to Nancy
What?
Pelosi and the mayor of
Who put it
Washington,
on
D.C.,
then?
And the mayor put it back in writing, as you know.
I don't know.
said,
There was
"You
just
know,
some event, and I
this
just
is
gave a
gonna be
speech."
very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, "I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers." They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible.
The president
She didn't
wasn't
do her job.
responsible for security?
About you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's
Good
remember
Lord.
Charlottesville.
Oh,
There was
no.
a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys on the
Oh,
militia,
no. the greatest
the
hits.
former president said, stand back and stand by.
Oh, the greatest hits.
So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy.
I think it's
because
kind
you
of
don't
good not
like
to
the
talk about the,
outcome. And be
like,
clear.
COVID
on that
riots and
point.
everything.
Donald Trump,
He was the
candidate,
president. She doesn't have to answer
has
for
said
anything.
In this election, there will be a bloodbath. If this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking, let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura, Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people. they covered
everyone
it.
on Fox
If they go
News says
an
I'm
extra
right.
Sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up.
I
They
watch
bring
Fox
all of
News.
this
They
stuff
told
up.
me I'm right.
I
They told
ask
me
you
I'm
this.
cool.
You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to...
This debate is a waste of time.
It's so ridiculous. Go
He's
down
laying the
to
groundwork to
Washington,
not do
DC,
another debate.
and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have
Sign
the
a
right
bill?
to
She's
do
not
it.
the
They don't
president?
need bills. They have the right to do it. The president of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed,
He thinks he's
all
still
has to
running
do is
against
say it to
Biden.
the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus
have a
on
cute
this
nickname
next issue
for
to
it.
both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past,
Yo,
weeks leading
chat.
up to
Conservatives are right now. They're
you
like,
said, quote,
actually,
"You
this
lost by
debate
a
is
whisker,"
terrible, and
but
nobody
you,
really
quote,
wants to
didn't
watch
quite
this.
make it, that
Oh,
you
it's
came up a
over.
little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
Oh my God. Does the political class really believe normies want to listen to this? Oh, they can't even listen to it.
Sarcastically. Look,
Oh,
there's
sarcastic.
so much proof.
It's
All you
over.
have to do is look at it, and they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten.
This
The
is not
election,
good. This is
people
bad.
should never be thinking about it. An election is fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls. And we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections
no.
are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of
Yeah,
these
that's
pieces of
not-
video. I
that's
didn't
great
detect the
replacement.
sarcasm.
That's
Lost
white-
by a whisker. We didn't quite make it.
That's supremacy.
Just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No
Republican.
judge looked at it.
And said there
They
was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread
standing.
fraud.
That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing.
Wow, he's still
Can you
litigating
imagine a system
2020.
where a person in an
I thought he would
election
give it
doesn't
up.
have standing. The president
He can't
of the
give it up.
United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd
Wow.
love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania.
Just find me
and I'll show you-
12,000 more
We have
votes.
so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won.
Kamala's
by
actually
President
doing
Biden
9/11.
And yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly,
You're
he's
fired.
having a very difficult time processing that.
But she's using
But
his
we
catchphrase.
cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as vice president.
I told you guys, she cooked
And
Pence.
world leaders are
People said it was the fly. It wasn't the fly. She
I have
summoned
talked
the
with
fly.
military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe
They're already spinning.
that perhaps we do
CNN
not have
flash poll
in
will
the
say
candidate to my
80%
right
Kamala
the
won. They're
temperament
spinning. They're already spinning.
or the ability
It's
to not
over.
be confused about
It's done.
fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just tell you about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men.
And he brings up a
man. He's a tough.
he brings up an authoritarian.
Smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because
World's
you
blowing
need
up.
Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that, but he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate,
he's not running against Biden anymore.
If he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million.
Oh, they're
votes,
complaining.
and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He
had to hop on my ult.
He can't stand her. But
Mr.
he
President.
got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now
Ben
she's
Shapiro's
running.
already
I
spinning.
don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm
President,
okay with it
Mr.
because
President, your time is
I think
up.
we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
John Doyle
The
gave up.
Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans.
Matt Walsh is
among
blaming the
them. Vice
moderators.
President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100
here we go.
hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in
Our
the
third
making.
weakest.
President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist.
Actually, how we got here was supporting Israel in not allowing a two-state solution, and also keeping Donald Trump's policy when it comes to moving our embassy to Jerusalem instead of in Tel Aviv, because Joe Biden wants the final solution for Palestinians.
And how it does so matters, because it is also true far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that.
Matt Walsh
Work around the
notices
clock, also
Trump's baited.
understanding that we must chart a
Misfiring.
course for a two-state solution. And in
Spinning.
that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability
Technically
to
not
defend
answering the
itself,
question.
in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate
Technically
with
didn't answer the question.
Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages
Kill
out
them all.
and prevent the killing
Kill
of
'em.
more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president,
He does not
it would
care.
have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech.
I mean, you
refused to
didn't
be
go
there 'cause
either.
She was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good
Inshallah.
at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because
She hates
the
everyone.
whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone.
He didn't mention
It would
Christians
have
either.
never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion.
So apparently
because they
Israel
took
and
off all the
Palestine will be
sanctions that
gone.
I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 20
Hezbollah.
different spheres of terror, and they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have entire career and
is she going to be like my husband is Jewish?
And the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un, and it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of
they're noticing their guy is dumb as fuck.
In highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're noticing he's dumb as fuck.
And she's the one
they're noticing
that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year 100
every time Trump takes the bait, he's a fish.
People into our country, their crime rates are way down.
Crime rates.
Endorsed her last week. Said I hope she wins, and I think he meant it. Because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way, gets paid a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
Is he trying to?
With much more
Biden is paid by
ABC
Russia.
News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Chat, he's getting cooked. And the fact that I didn't talk about it, but like that little thing where Kamala Harris walked over to his podium to shake his hand, and that was the first time they met. She walked over to his podium. She was behind his podium shaking his hand at the beginning because he didn't want to walk over to her. Oh no, Chris Rufo, remember the guy who basically controls the conservative operation for like their right-wing spins and their like the culture war, like the CRT, that trans stuff. This guy, even Chris Rufo is like, Kamala is clearing the bar. She's doing what she needs to do. Trump needs to shake up the dynamic. Dude, they're noticing. They're the noticer. They're noticing. Oh no. They're like, wait a second. Guys, wait a second. Wait, Kamala Harris is actually doing pretty good. Wait, but you guys told me that Kamala Harris didn't know how to talk. Guys, I'm in a group chat with my normie friends. They're saying Kamala Harris is bodying him. Guys, friends, they're posting screenshots of Donald Trump's face. They say he's old. Guys, wait a chat. Oh, Polymarket. Kamala Harris is about to take the lead in Polymarket while they're watching the debate. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. No. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, it's not going too well. Oh, it's not looking up for the boy. What the hell is happening? Oh, here we go. Dementia Dawn at it again. Oh, Dementia Dawn is getting crushed. Holy crap. Oh my gosh. Okay, chat. One in chat. If we're gonna spin back on it. One in chat if you're excited. Two in chat if you're scared. After this, after what we've seen so far. They said Kamala lost the momentum. She hopped on the debate stage and she grabbed it right back. Oh no, dude! They're conspiracy posting. Yeah, he's baited like a child. You know this guy? This is the guy who posted CP on this is the guy who posted CP on Twitter that got banned and Elon let back on. He's like, ABC is much nicer than I expected. They must know something that we don't. The transition of power is imminent. Oh, they're conspiracy posting. What the fuck? Yes, they're biased, but they're much nicer than I expected. They're ranked as the most biased mainstream media. And you have to understand, I expect the absolute worst, and it's not that. Oh, they know something is happening. Oh, he's like, they know. Oh, they know. Oh, no. He did what? You can check out our video on it. It's titled "The Worst Thing Elon Musk Has Ever Done" on the YouTube channel. It goes over how Elon Musk obliterated the child safety board at Twitter HQ, allowing pedophilia to run rampant on Twitter, and making it so that actual CP videos of children getting brutally abused stay up on Twitter, getting likes, and people are downloading it. That people can put that in like a folder of bookmarks of CP on Twitter. Because he has no team specifically dedicated to making sure that stuff gets taken off. There was a recorded instance where this girl's abuse was able to stay on Twitter for weeks after they reported it. Yeah, it's bad. King Jar Jar, thank you so much for the tier 4. Thank you so much.
How it could shake
thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Day. For now, though, let's go back to the debate.
Favorite emotes out. AOC said he sounded like
national constitution.
AOC said he sounded like a guy yelling at random people on 34th Street with a karaoke speaker. Oh no!
And you hear, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries.
Michael, thanks for the gifted.
Solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more.
Oh, did they tell him to calm down?
They don't ask Europe, which is
he's ramping up.
Bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions.
He's doing amazing except for Israel. Yeah.
Of dollars when I said either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize.
What's he talking about?
Said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a
he called him a criminal,
and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect
That's Biden, actually.
How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even
The split
become
screen's
president.
insane.
If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact,
He'll
when I
talk
saw
to them and
Putin
they'll
after I
just
left,
stop fighting.
Unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have
That's
millions
proof
of
that he had
people
no
dead,
clue.
and it's
Oh,
only getting worse,
troops on
and
the
it could
border.
lead to
Oh, good
World War
negotiation.
III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's. Where is our president? We don't even know.
He's probably at the White
And
House.
just to clarify
They
here,
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know.
Like a
Is he the
dog.
president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
your time is up. Just to clarify the question,
Okay.
do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have
He's
to stop
spitting
all
everywhere
of these
now.
human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
Oh, no.
I believe the reason that
Twitter's
Donald
greatest
Trump
hits
says
against
that
him, and
this
it's
war
working.
would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries.
It's all the best talking points, but she's actually using them.
Rules and norms, which is the importance of
Is this what it feels
sovereignty
like
and
when Dems
territorial
want to win?
integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand
It might be even worse than the
why
Project
European
2025
allies and our
agenda.
NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up
She knew
for the
that stat
sake
off the
of
top of her
favor
head.
and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be
No.
a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan
They prepared
came up in
for
the last hour.
everything.
I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women.
I'm gonna make sure that
quiet.
Russians are gonna be okay.
He would have been sitting
Quiet, please.
in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that
I gotta save this.
other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate
The N-word.
peace
He
before
has
the war
the
started.
N-word.
3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator.
Horrible.
They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one.
This little fella.
When I went to
not
meet with
him,
President
not her
Zelensky,
little
I met
bro
with
in
him over
him.
5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms.
Waffling again, little bro.
Who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to.
All conservatives I'm seeing have is that this woman is so annoying. She's such a bitch.
Burke said Trump.
Men are going to vote for Trump because she's such a bitch.
He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. Otherwise, we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision.
Oh, this is difficult.
Out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are.
Well,
when he was president,
he did send fighter jets to go defend Israel.
You can imagine. He calls himself
and we're in active war.
Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists
Look at his face.
And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, ex-president, invited them
to hold her tongue.
Camp David.
Is his nose running?
Does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President,
they're already blaming him.
You began the negotiations.
Already blaming someone.
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing.
It's good that
soldiers,
she made him have to answer about the Taliban
snipers.
thing.
And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban.
Abdul al-Shaid, is that right?
Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems.
Hey,
And he
Abdul,
said,
stop
"Why
the
do you
killing."
send me a picture of my house?" I said, "You're going to have to figure that out, Abdul." And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the.
Show me a picture of my house.
We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal and, in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country.
Oh,
Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black.
Oh,
And
no.
now she wants to be known as black." I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight.
N-word
Why
clock.
do you believe it's
1 second
appropriate
to midnight.
weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care.
Bro, he pulled up on
You
the
make a big deal out of
Jumbotron,
something. I couldn't care less.
her being Indian
Whatever
and
she
not
wants
black,
to be is okay with me.
at her rally, at his
Those are your
rallies.
words, so I'm
I don't
asking,
know. I don't know. I mean, all I can
I
say
don't know
is
my
I read
words.
where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then
I didn't know my
read
words.
that she was
I don't know what I
black.
said.
And that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
They begged him to drop it. He couldn't.
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5.
Bring up Epstein. That's all. That's
execution. This is the same individual.
Bring up Epstein,
who
please.
Spread birther lies about the
Oh my gosh! Finally,
President of the United States.
Finally, someone says it.
And I think the American people want better than that. Want better than this. Want someone who understands, as I do. I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other.
What can I say?
I meet with people all the time who tell me, can
This
we
debate
please
prep
just
is
have
godlike.
discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the
Her
dreams
fucking
of the
Gen
American
Z
people.
TikTok
Knowing that
marketing group was
of
crazy.
people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
And he didn't get a response.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it.
Everything is the worst thing ever.
And they come up with things like what she just said.
Black.
Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5, they admitted.
Oh,
they
the
said
stop
they
and frisk
pled
guy?
guilty. And I said, well, if
He's relitigating Central Park 5.
hurt a person, killed a person ultimately, and if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies.
I'm not racist anymore.
And I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. but they're destroying
Bigger,
our
better.
economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this. She is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away
She
from
is
Biden.
Biden.
I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation
Don't know
we've
the
ever
gen-
had. A horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad.
I will
that you
bring
can't
down
get
the
away with
inflation
that.
for black.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly.
Oh, here we go.
Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism
That's a
about
slide
what we can do
about him being old.
instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life. to
Yo, she
help
stole
you
that shit from
in that most
Elizabeth
critical
Warren.
stage of your child's development.
That I have a plan thing?
That is about allowing people to be able to pursue.
She's
what has
ripping
been
her drip
fleeting
like
in terms of
crazy.
The American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight.
Oh,
as
and
opposed to a conversation that is constantly about
cooking him and then
belittling
telling him to move on.
and name calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's turn
Trump,
back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have
plan
Everyone
to
gun.
not allow fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay. Thank you,
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump,
no, the
President
former
Trump.
president has
No,
said
I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to respond
No,
to.
I'm sorry. We're
I
gonna
just need to
move
respond
on, Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what
I mean, she
President
already
Trump
went over
said.
this. She doesn't
Your
technically
third
need to
time
respond.
running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You
Oh,
failed to
Trump Care doesn't
accomplish that.
exist?
You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it.
So he tried to get rid of it when he didn't have something
9 years
much
after
better?
you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up
Obamacare
with
is not
something,
healthcare.
and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up, they wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do
He's like,
I
I'm going
let
to
it rot?
fix Obamacare?
And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people.
He thinks
a
it's
lot of good
politically
people
good
in
to let
that
Obamacare rot?
administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain.
Oh, they're
I
spinning
had a
like
choice
crazy.
to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we'll look
here we go.
at different plans. If
We're looking
we
at
can
things.
come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population,
10 years and he
less
still has
money
no
and
plan.
give better health care than Obamacare.
Guys, we're-
then I
we're
would
looking.
Absolutely do it.
We're
But
trying to-
until
we're
then,
looking
I
for it
run
right now.
As good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now.
9
But
years.
if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive.
Well, I'm trying to-
There are
I'm
concepts and
thinking about a
options
plan.
we have to do that, and you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Dude, that's
Harris, in 2017,
That's
you
going
supported
on
Bernie
an
Sanders'
ad.
proposal to do away with private insurance and create a
That's going on an ad.
healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely
Now, this is a good
support,
question.
and over the last 4 years, years as vice president, private health care options, but what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking, and then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away, so stop with the continuous line.
She's strapped right now?
As it relates to the Affordable Care Act,
She's going to do what crooks couldn't?
just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act.
Finally.
60 times. I was a senator.
Medicare and
at the time
Medicaid, do that
when
too. He tried to cut
I will
it.
never forget the early morning
And every
hours
single one of his
when it was up for
financial
a vote in the
bills, he
United
tried to
States
cut it.
Senate. And the late, great John McCain,
Hand of
who you
elected.
have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to
Stole that from Bernie?
to strengthen the Affordable Care Act.
But didn't steal
not
Bernie's plan?
Get rid of it.
Vice
Fast as
President
prologue
Harris, thank
in terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a
She
lot
made
of
a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what?
They fought.
We
They
can do
all fought
much better
Obamacare.
than Obamacare. Much less money. But she won't
But we can do
private
way better than
insurance for
Obamacare. I
people,
know.
private
I'm thinking
medical
about it right
insurance.
now.
That's another thing she doesn't want to give.
President
People
Trump-
are paying
I'm thinking about a
privately
plan.
for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump,
And then you
thank
die.
We have another issue that we'd like to get
And a
to. It's
migrant
important
gets it
for a number
first.
of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris,
have to have
you call
water,
climate
good
change an
water.
existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you.
We're reaching the end, chat.
Well, the former president had said the climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs.
True.
And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American
fracking is horrible for the economy.
products, American automobiles. It includes
And the environment.
growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building
What?
these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse.
The IRA actually did a whole lot when it comes to revitalizing dying towns.
Millions of dollars. He's afraid
They're not going to reward them,
between
but
him and his son, they get all
a lot
this
of great
money
things
from
happen.
Ukraine.
What?
They get all this money from all of these different countries, and then
Is he really bringing up, like,
why is he so
Burisma?
loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did he get? Why
What?
did she pay him $3.5 million?
Oh, nah, Grandpa spinning on conspiracies.
They're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements
Thank you.
from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
He's cooked. He's cooked. He's cooked. He's done. He's finished. It's chat. This is a horrible performance by Donald Trump. The muted mic thing didn't even help him, honestly, because Kamala's team did really well with having that if somebody says something off screen, then the moderators have to let them let the audience know. So it's kind of muted, but also kind of not muted. Nah, dude. Nah, she's bashing him over the head. She's bashing him over the head. Like everything that you would, every single button, except for the Epstein one, they still need to hit that. But they can't because they keep loving Bill Clinton, who needs to be thrown under the bus too, if I'm going to be honest. But outside of that, she's hitting literally she's hitting every point, like almost perfectly. I think Trump's gotten some good hits in, like on Afghanistan. I think Kamala Harris had a good rebuttal, but like talking about the hit itself, the Afghanistan thing, that was a good hit. On some stuff with inflation, I think that was a decent. He got a good body blow in there, but just everything in general. Wow. This debate prep has been incredible. Incredible. This is really good. To have that on hand, the 800,000 Polish Americans in the United States, in Pennsylvania, where they were, her having that fact just off the top of her, like just off the dome, and bringing that up. Like, when was the last time you heard Polish Americans be brought up in a debate? It's so random, but it's so random in such a good way. Like, she knows a lot about like the individual people that makes up the United States, right? And being like, how would you feel about like their like family's home being taken over by Russia? You know, like a little call to action for them too, right? Like, wow, that is nasty. These are some really good hits she's getting in, and he adequately triggered him. She adequately triggered him. He was very triggered in several times. He's yelling. He's like, he isn't slurring as much as he was, but he's getting baited like crazy. Like, she brought up the rally thing, and he started with the rally, hit the question a little bit, but then remembered how angry he was that she said that, and then brought the rally thing back up again, where you honestly forget what he said in the middle. Do you remember what he said in the middle there about the rally, or do you just remember the fact that he got angry about the rally? I listen. He can't even. He's mispronouncing words all the time. He's yelling. He's spitting on the microphone. Whoa now, buddy. Whoa now, buddy. Obviously, and in the fact that these conservatives are having to start to spin this. Many of them are starting to spin Many of them are starting to spin like crazy on this. Mike Croc, thank you so much for the 5. I really appreciate you for that. Is this hope? Is this hope? Is this real? It's all going to be good, chat. I don't know about that. But remember how I talked about earlier how Kamala Harris needs to slap Trump upside the head and get like some good slam dunks on him? She did that. Now, I don't know what people are going to say at the end of this. I don't know how well people are going to think she did. But I am going to tell you now that if we're talking about the like, because they both tried to take things from each other, right? So Trump tried to take the I'm speaking thing from her, and she hasn't done it at all. And it kind of feels like a Charlie Brown, like taking away the football. Like, people expected that the reason why she wanted the mics to be unmuted was because she was looking for that moment, and then he tried to take it from her, right? And I think some people can think that's good, but on when it comes to like rhetoric standpoint, her being like, "You're fired," they fired you 3.5 years ago.
Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
That was nasty.
So I think you've heard tonight 2 very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past.
Is she going to do her stump speech?
And an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors.
You should have really brought up paid family leave.
Giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together. That is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world.
Please stop saying that.
I will be a president that
I don't like
will protect
that.
our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now.
That's not bad.
Someone who cares about
that's a pretty good line.
And is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
That's a good closing statement. Let's see what Trump's got.
By saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years.
She's the vice president.
3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe
this is the
American people don't believe
this is the stupid Twitter comment that gets like 30,000 likes that gets ratioed.
We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do
if she's the vice president, why doesn't she just fix America?
Whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East.
He's talking about Joe Biden again.
with Russia and Ukraine, we're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan.
You literally invited the Taliban to America?
What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country.
They're eating our cats.
President, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate
Oh,
from here in Philadelphia.
man. All right, chat. All right, chat. So that was it. That was Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. Owarida. It might be Owarida. It might be. It very well might be. This was an incredibly good debate from Kamala Harris, and I don't think that I could have imagined her doing much better.